Okay, picture this. It's 1880. You're a doctor in Victorian London. You are respectable, you have a mustache that could rival a walrus, and you are absolutely exhausted. Why? Because your hand is cramping, like really cramping. And the reason for your pain? You have spent the last 6 hours manually stimulating the nether regions of upper-class women to cure them of hysteria. This is the story we all know. It's the peak of historical irony, the idea that the most sexually repressed society in history literally invented a machine to automate the female orgasm because doctors were getting carpal tunnel syndrome. It's funny, it's ironic, and it makes for a great dinner party fact. But here is the crash I promised you. What if I told you that this story, the tired hand theory, is mostly a myth? Recent historians like Hallie Lieberman have combed through thousands of medical records and found almost nothing. There is practically zero evidence that doctors were routinely bringing women to orgasm as a standard medical treatment. The reality is actually much weirder. It's a story about industrialization, about how we took the technology of the steam engine and applied it to the human body, not for sex, but for efficiency. Today, we are going to debunk the myths and look at the actual history of the vibrator. We are looking at a device that has lived 3 distinct lives. Life number 1, a legitimate high-tech medical instrument sold in the Sears catalog right next to the toaster. Life number 2, a shameful secret hidden in the grainy frames of illegal 1920s stag films. And life number 3, a weight loss gadget for 1950s housewives that, wink wink, didn't actually reduce any fat. This isn't just a story about a sex toy. It's a story about how society takes a simple mechanism, an off-center weight spinning on a motor, and projects all its fears, desires, and shame onto it. To understand the machine, you have to understand the malady, hysteria. For roughly 2,000 years, if a woman did anything annoying, like having an opinion, being anxious, or just causing trouble, she was diagnosed with hysteria. The Greeks thought the womb was literally an animal that wandered around the body causing havoc. By the Victorian era, the cure was pelvic massage. But because the Victorians were so terrified of female sexuality, they couldn't call it sex. They called the orgasm a hysterical paroxysm, a medical crisis like a fever breaking. They stripped the pleasure out of it to make it palatable for polite society. We're going to climb from the ridiculous steam-powered origins, the rise, to the sudden scandalous collapse of the industry, the crash, and finally to the feminist reclamation. Stick around, because in Act 2, I'm going to show you the exact moment the vibrator went from being a mom appliance to a dirty secret, and it involves a movie reel and a car in the woods. You do not want to miss that. Let's start with the golden era, or what I call the industrial revolution of the pelvis. Act 1 begins in 1869 with George Taylor and his invention, the manipulator. Imagine a massage table with a hole cut in the center. Through that hole comes a vibrating sphere. But this is before wall outlets. So how do you power this thing? Steam. You literally had a coal-fired steam engine, like a locomotive, usually in the basement or a separate building because it was spewing toxic smoke. It was connected by pipes and belts to the table. It wasn't intimate, it was heavy industry. Then, in the 1880s, we get the secret sauce, electricity. Enter Dr. Joseph Mortimer Granville. He invents the electromechanical vibrator, known as the Percuteur. It looked like an electric hammer. Now you have to understand the power source here. We aren't talking AA batteries. We're talking about wet cell batteries the size of a refrigerator filled with corrosive acid sitting in the corner of the doctor's office. And the irony? Granville was a total prude. He explicitly wrote that he only used it to cure muscle pain in men, and that using it on women would only encourage their hysterical vagaries. But you can't stop progress. As soon as houses were wired for electricity, manufacturers had a problem. They had power, but nothing to plug in. So they invented appliances. We got the sewing machine, the fan, the kettle, the toaster, and the vibrator. It was the fifth appliance. By 1910, it was as normal to see a vibrator on a vanity table as it was to see a hairbrush. It wasn't hidden in a drawer. It was a symbol of modernity. It said, "I have electricity and I care about my health." And the secret sauce of its success was accessibility. Look at the Sears home motor from 1918. This is my favorite example. It was a single motor base that came with attachments. You could attach a beater to whip your eggs, a fan blade to cool your kitchen, and a vibrator attachment for, well, massage. You could literally make a meringue and then treat your hysteria with the same motor. It was the ultimate multitasker, and it cost $5, which was the price of 2 doctor visits. The economics just made sense. But how did they market this without getting arrested? They used the health panacea strategy. They claimed it cured everything. I'm serious. Ads for the White Cross electric vibrator claimed it could cure deafness, malaria, obesity, and floating kidney. The Hamilton Beach New Life vibrator listed 56 different ailments it could treat. It was the snake oil of the electric age. By framing it as a medical cure-all, they bypassed the obscenity laws. If it cures malaria, it can't be a sex toy, right? And for the things they couldn't say, they used code. The ads were masterpieces of dual-use marketing. They used sensory language like thrills your whole body, penetrating and tingling cheerful glow. They featured the modern girl, independent and radiant, reclining in bed. And here is the trick. The ad in the magazine was clean, like cures backache, but when you bought the box, the user manual inside gave you the real instructions. It was an open secret. Everyone knew, but nobody said it out loud. This was the peak. Companies like Hamilton Beach and Polar Cub were making millions. They sold these things in velvet-lined boxes as gifts for the whole family. It was normalized. It was accepted. But underneath the surface, the foundation was cracking. Doctors were starting to realize that their hysteria diagnosis was bogus, and moralists were getting suspicious of why Mrs. Jones spent so much time with her back massager. And that brings us to the end of Act 1. The vibrator is the darling of the American home. But there is a villain entering the story. A villain made of celluloid and 16 mm film. Because just as people were getting comfortable, the porn industry discovered the device. And once they put it on camera, there was no going back. Act 2. The crack in the foundation. The villain isn't a person, it's the stag film. In the 1920s, underground pornography started to boom. These were short, silent, hardcore films shown at frat parties and brothels. The directors needed props to show action without sound. And what did they grab? The medical vibrator. It was the perfect prop. 2 films changed history. First, there was Ab Abend in the Evening, a German film from around 1910. It features a classic voyeur setup. A man looks through a keyhole and sees a woman using a vibrator. Then came A Free Ride in 1915, one of the first American hardcore films. These movies shattered the medical illusion. You couldn't claim it was for curing malaria when audiences were watching it being used for explicit pleasure on screen. The plausible deniability evaporated. Film scholars call this the era of the meat shot, close-ups of penetration. The vibrator became a star of the genre because it provided a visual shorthand for pleasure in a silent medium. But this fame came at a cost. It moved the device from the health category to the obscene category. It was no longer a tool for doctors, it was a tool for degenerates. Simultaneously, the medical establishment turned on it. In 1915, the Journal of the American Medical Association published a brutal takedown. They declared the vibrator industry a delusion and a snare. They attacked it on 2 fronts. 1. The medical claims were lies. It doesn't cure cancer. And 2. The hidden purpose was masturbation. The doctors washed their hands of it. Then came the legal hammer, the Comstock Act. This law criminalized sending obscene materials through the mail. In the golden era, vibrators were mailed freely as medical devices, but once they were linked to porn and denounced by the AMA, they risked falling into the obscene category. Manufacturers panicked. They couldn't advertise in Good Housekeeping anymore. By the late 1920s, the ads vanished. The device went underground. This was the missed opportunity. If society had just accepted that sexual health was a real thing, we could have avoided 50 years of shame. But instead, the vibrator had to put on a disguise. It had to pretend to be something else entirely. Welcome to the 1950s, the era of camouflage. The vibrator resurfaces, but now it's wearing a fake mustache. It's called the spot reducer. Companies claimed that if you rubbed this vibrating device on your thighs, it would break down fat. It was a lie. Physics doesn't work that way. But women bought them by the thousands. Why? Because it was a respectable way to own a vibrator. Let's look at the mechanics for a second. Inside these spot reducers, and almost every vibrator since, is an eccentric rotating mass. It's just a motor spinning a weight that is off-center. That wobble creates the vibration. It's the same technology used in your phone's silent mode today. The technology didn't change from 1900 to 1950. Only the story we told about it changed. Then, in 1968, the sleeping giant awoke. Hitachi, yes, the Japanese company that makes excavators and nuclear power plants, released the magic wand. They marketed it strictly for soothing sore muscles. Because it plugged into the wall, AC power, it was wildly powerful, essentially an industrial machine. Hitachi had no idea what they had done. They accidentally built the Cadillac of sex toys. Enter the hero of Act 3, Betty Dodson. She was a radical sex educator who started holding body sex workshops in New York. She bought magic wands by the caseload from Macy's. She didn't hide them. She didn't call them spot reducers. She taught women that the vibrator was a tool for autonomy. She famously said, "I consider the 70s to be the youth of old age. Just keep your orgasms in place." Because the magic wand was so powerful, it was industrial grade, remember? Dodson developed techniques. She taught women to use a barrier, like a small towel, between the device and the body to diffuse the vibration into a deep, rumbly sensation. This wasn't just using a toy, this was education. She was deprogramming centuries of the hysteria myth. Hitachi, the corporation, was terrified. They are a serious industrial conglomerate. They didn't want to be known as the sex toy company. For years, they tried to ignore it. Finally, in 2013, they actually stopped producing it under their own name. They spun it off. It's now just the Magic Wand Original. No Hitachi branding. Even today, the corporate shame lingers, proving that the crack from Act 2 never fully healed. The lesson here is simple. Technology is never neutral. The vibrator has been a medical device, a porn prop, a weight loss lie, and a feminist icon. But mechanically, it's just a motor and a weight. The only thing that changed was us. We projected our own hysteria onto the machine. From coal-fired steam engines to the shelves of Macy's, the vibrator is a survivor. It proves that you can ban a book or burn a film. You cannot legislate against human nature. The buzz never died. It just changed frequency. If you learned something new today, and I bet you did, hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, did you know about the steam engine? Because I am still not over it. Thanks for watching.